Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mon Kurian. I'm going live today from Tiju's Academy, Tiruvalla. Hope all of you are doing good. So let's start today's session. So today I'll be dealing with tips to extend IELTS speaking, the part 2. So as you know, we have discussed about the part 1, that's the warm-up session. And in my last video, I spoke about the part 3, that's the warm-up session. So now let's discuss about how to extend your speaking part 2 or your cue card or your task card session. So let's start with the first slide. Let's see what's happening in the first slide. Okay. So what is all about part 2, task card or cue card? What's it all about? So this part gives many students a lot of difficulty and stress, and for good reasons. It can be quite difficult, unpredictable and unnatural. After all, unless someone is giving a speech, we don't often speak to someone for 1 or 2 minutes straight. There is usually a back and forth in our conversations where we continually ask each other questions. But in speaking task, part 2, the spotlight is on you. So it's in part 2, you are given a task card or a cue card. So what is a task card or a cue card? You're given a question or a question and you will have a couple of prompts, maybe 3, 4 or 5 prompts. So you read the question, you have 1 minute to prepare the question. So once you prepare it, you have 2 minutes to speak. So when you speak to a stranger or when you speak to your friend and family, it's a two-way conversation where you speak and you stop and you listen. But here, it's altogether a different ball game. Here, you prepare the question, you have the prompts, and you have to speak for 2 minutes on that question and the prompts. So it's a big challenge. So how can we ace it up, or how can we, get good scores or good band scores in your part 2? So I have prepared a few tips that is going to help you in your part 2 or your cue card or your task card session. So let's look into the first slide, the first tip. Grammar. Yes, Suraj. Hello, how are you? Hope you're doing good. Okay, Suraj. So as I mentioned before, how to extend your part 2, which is a tough one, a tough nut to crack. So part 2, namukku enganeyana extend cheyan pattunna. And what are the few tips I have prepared for you guys so that's going to help you out. So grammar is one of them. So the key here is to read the questions carefully. While you will be changing your grammar throughout the monologue, it's important to know where to start. Many questions may be asked to you about something that's already happened or something in the past. Some questions may ask you about a favorite place or a thing, and some still may ask you to talk about the future. You'll never know what questions you're going to get, so you need to be prepared for every possibility. Okay. So Suraj, as I mentioned before, grammar plays an important role. So make sure when you're practicing, you take care of your grammar. Grammar is very important. If a question is asked to you, for example, questions right, describe a book you have recently read. So this question is, for example, you can take it as your cue card or your task card question. You'll have a couple of prompts below this. So this question is asking you about a book that you have recently read. So it's gone by, ningal already vaichu, you've already read it. So when you answer back to the examiner after preparing, make sure your preparation is all in the past tense, right? When you bought the book, how you bought the book, when you bought it, these will be a couple of prompts, right? What's the book all about? And then a book in the content, who wrote the book, the author of the book, likewise. And after reading it, how did you feel? Your experience. Experience is the last prompt. To last prompt. So make sure if your question is directed to you in a past tense, make sure you answer it in the past tense, right? And then again, if it's in something that's you're doing present, a hobby. For example, describe an interesting hobby that you like to do. Yes, good afternoon, Rajeshwari. Hope you're doing good. Okay, so describe an interesting hobby you like to do in the present tense. So if you follow a hobby like gardening, collecting stamps or collecting coins, perfumes, watches, whatever is your hobby, right? Collecting books. So you have to make sure that when you're speaking for that 2 minutes, you are speaking in the present tense. Yes, Sapna, good afternoon. So make sure this comes as well, the tenses. The past tense ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞു, present also. It's your hobby related questions ആയിരിക്കും. What are you currently doing? അങ്ങനെയുള്ള questions ആയിരിക്കും. Right? You should answer it in the present tense. Same ways, likewise, if it's something that's for your future, right? Describe a language you would like to learn in the future. Yes, Gagana, good afternoon. Hope you're doing good. So, describe a language you would like to learn. That's something that you are going to do it in the future, right? Or a language, you know a couple of languages, but you would like to learn a language that's a foreign language, maybe Spanish, Italian, whatever, right? So, maybe in the future, a language that I would like to learn will be French, right? Spanish, Italian, it's up to you guys, right? So make sure you don't jump off from the tenses. So any questions directed to you, any questions that you're preparing, make sure you're answering it in the same tense, be it the past tense, present, or the future. So grammar plays an important role there. Okay, so let's move over to our next slide. Let's see what does the next slide say. Vocabulary. Yes, Adira, good afternoon. Hope you're doing good. So vocabulary also plays an important role. So vocabulary also counts as important. As I mentioned before, 25% is graded on your grammar. Same likewise here, vocabulary also plays an important role. 25% will be in your vocabulary. ഞാൻ ഇതിൻ്റെ മുമ്പത്തെ സ്ലൈഡ്സിലൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ട്, the only way to improve your vocabulary is to start reading. The more you read, you get new words. Right? And you get new words and you can use it in your practices, those words with the meaning arangita, and you can find out the synonyms as well. Okay, so let's see what does the vocabulary mean. ഇവിടെ എന്താണ് vocabulary for your part 2, എന്താണ് പറയുന്നത് for your task card or your cue card session. So vocabulary, as we discussed in part 1, you want to use vocabulary appropriate to the question and the topic. Many students confuse using a range of vocabulary with using the biggest words to show off all the vocab that they have studied. But the key here is appropriacy. എപ്പോഴാണ് നമ്മളത് യൂസ് ചെയ്യേണ്ടത് and how to use it in the right context, right? Showing or using big words is not going to be a good scorer. Using the word correctly in the appropriate place is what you need to do, right? Also, make sure you have some synonyms lined up. As I mentioned before, synonyms, repeating the same word over and over again is not going to gain you good scores. So, start reading, get the meaning of it, learn the synonyms, and use it in your daily vocab. Right? Yes, Blessing. Good afternoon. Hope you're doing good. Okay, so as I mentioned before, we have gone through grammar. This is the second slide that we are discussing about vocabulary. Right? Also, make sure you have some synonyms lined up. You'll want to use a range of vocabulary. Again, this doesn't mean big words. Make sure they are appropriate. If you can use them naturally and you have been using them naturally in your regular speaking practice, then by all means try and use idioms in your speaking as well. However, don't force them. The examiner, who is a native speaker, can absolutely tell if you are using the idioms naturally or if they are being forced. Even in my previous live sessions, I have mentioned to you, vocabulary is a key role. It plays a key important role in your scores. Likewise, idioms. If you want to get higher band scores, say 8, 9, or not a 9, at least 7.5 and above, using idioms is a good way. But idioms in the meaning, hey Vishnu, good afternoon, hope you're doing good. So Vishnu, blessing, this is for you guys. Today I'm taking a session on how to extend the part 2 session. That's your cue card or the task card session. So I mentioned grammar before and now I'm going through vocabulary. So hope this helps you in your practice sessions and for your examination that's going to come up. Okay, so idioms in the karyam paranjappo, when in the idioms part, so make sure that you know when to use the idiom and the right contextual use here. And don't force it. Excuse me. Don't force the idioms. It should come out naturally. Okay. Adutha slide nokka. Paraphrase the question. So, namakka cue card gettumpo, when you get the cue card, don't straight away jump to the first, second, third and fourth prompt. Make sure you paraphrase the question without changing the meaning. And then go ahead with the prompts. So what is paraphrasing the question? It's important to start every speaking task too with a basic paraphrased introduction of what you're going to talk about. One of the best ways to begin a speaking task part 2 is to say I'm going to talk about, I'm going to speak about, and then the paraphrased question. So this shows the examiner you know what you're doing. Examiner ne mansalai, you understood the question, you paraphrase the question without changing the meaning of the question. Adum parnja sheshamaanu nammal first, second, third prompt, we are going to jump over to that. But make sure you always paraphrase the question and then say, I'm going to talk about something or I'm going to speak about this today, and then paraphrase the question. That's going to make the examiner understand that you understood the question, ningalku question mansalai, and also that you have paraphrased it in a good way, and now you're going to talk about it with each of the prompts. Okay, so let's move over to the next prompt. Let's see what the next prompt is all about. Tell a story and why tell a story. For example, cue cards, okay, most of the time the cue cards that you are given, most of the time you try to relate it to yourself. If you can relate it to yourself, that will be very good because you have already done it, ningal already cheyidittundu, you have gone through that experience, and it will be easy for you to note down your ideas and speak on it for 2 minutes. But yes, if it's something new, if you have never done it or never experienced it, you have to tell a story. Oru kada parayanam. You have to fabricate a story. Oru story fabricate idu parayanam. So what is it? How to tell a story and why tell a story? Well, you have already lived it. You already know what happened. If you are going to relate it with yourself, if you have already gone through that experience, or if you have already done that, right? You know who was there, what it felt like, what it looked like, and how it changed you or made a difference. It should make your present preparation easier. It should also take some of the pressure off you while thinking about what to say. Usually, when we tell a story, we have no shortage of things to say. It will also sound more natural, which is one of the main keys to being successful with the speaking test, right? So നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ, if you have experienced it yourself, നിങ്ങൾ അത് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ a cue card that you're given, if you have already experienced it, if you have already done it, a hobby that you're enjoying and you're following, it's easy to relate, right? അതിൽ നമുക്കൊന്നും ചിന്തിക്കേണ്ട ആവശ്യമില്ല. You know what you're doing and you know all the ideas. It will, in 1 minute, you can easily note down all the points and you can speak because you are doing that. You have experienced it, right? So, for example, if your question asks you to describe a possession you have that is very important to you, you can start off by saying what the possession is, and then begin the story of how the possession came into your life. At this point, just keep moving along with the story, and before you know, the long turn will be over. Finally, a story helps you to use a range of tenses that will be sure to impress the examiner. So, Namali kada parayampo, make sure the tenses are important, as I mentioned in the grammar part. Vocabulary is also important in the vocabulary part. And when you're telling or narrating the story for 2 minutes, make sure you tell the story, if you have already experienced it, with the grammar and the vocabulary included. And this will come out naturally. And as I mentioned before, idioms use go ahead, use it, right? But make sure the idioms that you're using goes with the context of your cue card or what you're saying. Just don't force it. Force it unnaturally. Why? Because the examiner knows that you're forcing the idiom just to get scores, and that's not going to get your scores because it's not coming out naturally. You're forcing it just so that you can get some good scores. But no, the examiner knows it. They are clever. They know that you're forcing your idioms and phrases, and you're not going to get scores. So when you're practicing, kore idioms and kore vocabularies, start reading for your vocabularies, grammar check cheyanam, and idioms okay use cheyaneram in your story or in your cue card task card speaking session 2 minutes. Make sure you use those and you use them naturally and don't force them, because when you force them, the examiner will know immediately and you're not going to get marks over there, or you're not going to get your desired band score. Fair enough? Okay, so let's move over to the next slide and see what does that say. Use the prompts as a guide. So you all know, nammalde cue card task card inde adiyil 5-6 prompts undallo, right? So as commonly it's called as the sub questions, but actually they are not sub questions, they are called prompts. So what are the prompts and how to use them as a guide? Many students receive their question and instead of trying to tell a good story, they just try to go through the prompts one after the other. Unfortunately, however, after they have made it through all the prompts, they still have a minute to speak and nothing left to say. So don't let this be you. Very true. Even here, I have noticed in my training sessions with my students here, you try to hurry. നമ്മൾ അത് തീർക്കാൻ വേണ്ടിയാണ് നോക്കുന്നത്. It's not a race to finish it. It's how you speak, how fluently you speak, how accurately you speak, how good you speak, using all your vocabulary, your grammar, and fluently you speak. Right? So when you try to hurry the prompts and try to finish the prompts, it's going to be a negative for you. It's not going to help you in the long run. In the long run, you have to make sure that you use those prompts as a guide, one after the other. Or prompt, paraphrase the question, then after paraphrasing the question, you start with the first prompt, then go ahead, speak about the first prompt, then go jump over to the next prompt, then slowly to the third, and finally to your experience or how you felt about it or your experience, the last. Instead, by finishing the prompts, what happens is by 1 minute 10-second mark, you're over. And then most of the candidates or most of the students, what they do is they try to repeat or they try to say whatever they've already said. And that's not going to help you because it's not going to give you a good score. So what does it say? Don't let this be you. In the previous tip, we talked about telling a story. So I highly recommend that you use the prompts not only as a guide for what you talk about, but as a safety net. That is, only use the prompts when you have run out of things to say from your story. Just in case you finish too early, now you have some additional ideas you can talk about to finish up the long turn or the task 2 or the cue card. So make sure whenever you are using the prompts, go slow. It's 2 minutes, that the mark is 2 minutes. While practicing, make sure you practice for more than 2 minutes 25 or 2 minutes 30-second mark, so that you'll be comfortable when you go for your examination, for your speaking examination test. So here what you can do is, once you paraphrase your question, paraphrase the question, and today I'm going to speak about, or today I'm going to talk about this, and then you go ahead with your first prompt, try to stick on it for at least a minimum of 25 to 30 seconds, then jump over to the next prompt, try to stick over there, try to speak on it for another 30 seconds. This way you cover 1 minute, and the remaining 2 or 3 prompts, you can easily go ahead 30 seconds and you're done. So use the prompts as a guide and don't rush on it. Don't try to finish it because it's not a race. Uru race allada finish cheyavendi. So don't worry about the time and don't worry about the time. That's the examiner's job. He or she is going to stop you when they feel that you have said enough. Right? There are times when nowadays most of the candidates nallabole samsarikkuvaanenge, they don't let the candidate speak for 2 minutes. They just tell them by the 1 minute 20-second or 1 minute 30-second mark ആവുമ്പോൾ the examiner tells the candidates to stop because അവർക്ക് evaluate ചെയ്യുന്നതിലെല്ലാം ആ 1 minute 30 secondsൽ കിട്ടി. But yes, when you practice, make sure you can reach the 2 minute mark. So when you practice, try to practice for 2 minutes or 2 minutes to 30 seconds, so that when you go for your examination, you're comfortable, you're easy, and you can speak for 2 minutes at a stretch. Fair enough. Now let's move over to the next slide. Artha slide lo to movie idu noka inda parine. Talk until the examiner stops you. It's very important. Don't stop in between and don't worry about the time njan paranjittundu. So make sure you don't stop until and unless the examiner stops you. Right? So you tell a story, right? You tell a story, you should be able to speak for 2 minutes and even more. So practice yaneram, make sure you are speaking for more than 2 minutes 30 seconds so that you are comfortable when you go for your examination. You can easily speak for 2 minutes. So as a rule, the examiner is there to stop you when the time is up. So you should take care. You should take full advantage of all the time you have to impress the examiner with your speaking abilities. If you finish too early, there's a chance the examiner hasn't really been able to accurately assess your speaking. In order to avoid this, practice speaking for a full 2 minutes and a half or 2 minutes 30 seconds to 3 minutes at home, so that when you get to the test center or when you go for your examination, 2 minutes will feel like a breeze, easier to boom. right? So whenever you're practicing, go ahead, go cross the 2 minute 30 second mark, try to reach the 3 minute mark if possible. If not, 2 minutes and 30 seconds is fair enough. It's a good mark. Other practice wherever you are practicing, at home or any institutes that you go, make sure that you are able to cross that 2 minutes and 30 second 2.5 minute mark, cross yambatununda, so that when you go for your examination, it will be a piece of cake. You will just feel like that you spoke and you still have left with so many things to say, and the examiner stops you. But make sure you impress the examiner with all the other more important criteria. That's your vocabulary, your accuracy, how you speak fluently, and your grammar. These all count. And your pronunciation, make sure you practice your pronunciation as well, because accent, accent is not the criteria. Accent, ella mother tongue influence accent varum, but the pronunciation should be clear. Okay, so now let's move over to the next slide and see what the next slide is. Stay on the topic, very important. Don't deviate from the topic. So this may be self-evident, but just be aware, sometimes you start off with a nice answer to the topic and end up somewhere completely elsewhere or different. Remember to use the prompts as a guide. However, as long as you're in the general area of the topic, especially when you tell a story, then you will be fine. So staying on the topic is very important, because the examiner wants to know whether you can clearly speak on a given subject or a given topic. So your cue card is your subject or your topic, and you have the prompts to help you to stay on that topic. Prompts the main use of the prompts is you are not deviating from the topic. You are talking about the subject that's been given to you, and you're not deviating, you're not going elsewhere, right? So when you start, make sure when you talk about a thing, you're talking about the same thing till the end, till the experience part, till the end, till you finish all your prompts. Don't deviate from the topic. Stay on the topic. Off topic agalle. So these were the few slides that I prepared for you today, and I hope this helps you. Make sure you practice these, using your vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, and fluency. And as I mentioned before, all these will help you get a good score in your part 2, your cue card or your task card sessions, especially for your long term, because it's tough when you get a question, especially you're anxious, you'll be nervous. So if you practice, and you'll be perfect, and when you go there, it will be easy for you. So I hope these slides helped you. So Vishnu, Blessing, Adara, Kagana, Swapna, Rajeshwari, hope this helped you, and I'll see you in my next video, in my next live session. Keep practicing. Take care. This is Mon Kurin signing off from Tiju's Academy, Tiruvalla. Goodbye.